So I'm going to talk about pine martens in the New Forest. So I'm just as sort of a brief introduction. I'm Marcus. This is Emily from Wild New Forest, or Wild New Forest Guided Tours. I always forget to add that bit on. And so we are a company, or like a not-for-profit organisation that does wildlife research and ecological survey work in the New Forest. But then we also do guided walks and boat trips and all that sort of stuff to raise funds to put back into the fieldwork we're doing with various things. So today I'm going to talk about pine martens. So we've been studying pine martens in the forest since 2016. So I'm going to talk all about them. So first of all, what's a pine marten? So pine marten is a large mustelid. So a mustelid is the same family as stoat and weasel and otter, polecat, as you can see here. They're an omnivore, so they eat pretty much anything and everything. They're nocturnal, almost exclusively nocturnal in our neck of the woods. And they're arboreal, and so they live their life up in the trees, a bit similar to, they live a similar lifestyle to a squirrel. So they're spend a lot of their time up in the canopy. They'll come down to the forest floor to feed. But because they're a big animal, so they're sort of like the size of a domestic cat with a big old tail on the back, sort of fox-like tail. So they're quite big. And so to live their life up in the trees, they have to keep their weight load quite low. So they have to have they've got a unique body structure, almost a unique bone structure as well, a bit like birds. They've got sort of hollowed bones to keep their weight down. But they don't hibernate like a lot of the other mammals do. They don't hibernate because they can't build up all that fat and muscle because they've got to keep it at a low level. So otherwise they'll be falling out of trees, and that's no good. And they're active all year round. So that makes it a bit easier. They're very feline-like, they're very cat-like, and they're quite lazy, and so they like to sleep a lot. And so at this time of year, they generally just come out to feed, and then they spend like literally 22 hours a day sleeping. So a bit about pine martens in the UK before we move on. They were thought to be the most abundant predator in the UK, as it says there, in the Mesolithic period, and that was a period when the country was covered in tree cover. But rolling forward, largely extinct by 1915. They became extinct for two main reasons. Well, three actually. One is their habitat. So back then, when they were abundant, the UK was covered in trees. They're an arboreal species. But as farming and land clearance took place, it made a lot of habitat unsuitable for pine martens. So that's one thing. Another is they were a target for gamekeepers. So they're a predator, and so they weren't kindly looked upon by gamekeepers, and they were hunted. But their main decline is down to their coat. So they've got a really nice soft coat, very cat-like, like I said. And so they apparently make nice scarves. And so that was a big part of their decline. And so back in, particularly in the Victorian period, they had a price on their head. And so if you were hard up for money, you could go out into the woods and catch and skin a pine marten, and you could sell the pelt. And it was a way of making money. And so that really added to their demise. So all of these pressures on them led them to become nearly extinct in the UK. They're restricted to a few parts in Scotland, up here in the Highlands of Scotland. But with a change of attitudes and a change of culture, they've slowly started spreading, and then that's been reinforced by some reintroductions. So there's a reintroduction in 1980 in Galloway Forest, just here, and then another one in Wales, both in the Forest of Dean and Mid Wales in 2015 and 2019. And so they've gone from a tiny population, left a relict population in the Highlands, to the latest figures in 2020, as you can see, widespread across most of Scotland. That population in Galloway is spread across the Scottish borders. Then we've got them in North Wales and the Forest of Dean. And then we've got this random little blip where we are. And then this is what I'm going to talk about today. And so, pine martens in the New Forest. So, as I said before, they were thought to be extinct in 1915. Then, in 1993, we had a couple of records and a roadkill, and the roadkill was picked up. So you get records for these things all the time, so like you do with big cats and all sorts, and you're never really sure if it really is. And pine martens can look a lot like a fox if seen very quickly. So there's a lot of scepticism over certain records. but a roadkill is conclusive, it's there. And so that roadkill was picked up and DNA tested, and it's found to be of Czech origin, so clearly not a local. So we think probably an escape from somewhere. And so that was it. There was the odd record in the 1990s, but I think in the whole of the 1990s there was about 4 or 5 claims of somebody seeing one, and they were all a bit dubious. But then as we moved into the early 2000s, there were more and more records and people seeing them. And then by chance, I was doing some field work with another species, hawfinches, and we had a trail camera, and I'll show you the clip in a minute. We got the picture of the back of an ear. I thought that looked like a pine marten. And so then we stepped up our efforts, and we did actually record them on a camera. And then subsequently, as you can read there's more roadkills, and then there's more and more captured on film. And so what that shows us is that numbers, for some quirky reason, were increasing in the New Forest. And so we wanted to try and understand that and get to the bottom of it, which is why we started the survey. And so that's that clip that I said, that shot, back of an ear. So you can see why it had us confused. And so as Russ and I were thinking, what on earth could that be? So that was on the 7th of March, 2016. Rather annoyingly, all these camera footages that I show you, they're all in the American date format, which I've been working with them for years. I still struggle to get my head around it. But then, so as a result of this, we put a load of cameras out, and then we got this. So this was on the 17th of March. This is clearly a pine marten. So this is the first record, first official documented evidence of pine marten in the New Forest. So that was excellent. Eating our hawfinch bait. So it's very exciting at the time. And so we did lots of stuff on the back of that. But to cut a long story short, we started a survey in 2021. So in between 2016 and 2021, we had a few roadkills, as I said, and those roadkills were also DNA tested, and they came back as being of Scottish origin. And so that was a lot more exciting than the Czech origin one that we had before. So that prompted us to do a bit more digging. And so we started a survey in 2021. And what I'm going to talk about today is a survey that we did with a load of clips and various bits and pieces. So the survey was with us, Forestry England, the Wildlife Trust, and local groups. There's a Hampshire Badger group. They were really helpful, so we did a lot of work with the Hampshire Badger group. And what we wanted to do is try to understand where pine martens are, how many pine martens are in the forest, what they're doing, what habitats they need, and we used it as an opportunity to record other mammals. So there hasn't, believe it or not, there hasn't been a detailed study of small mammals in the New Forest for about 40 years, and so that was an opportunity to look at other stuff as well. So that's what we started doing. How we did it with trail cameras. So we got these trail cameras here, so these are discrete cameras. We started off with 30 of them, we've got about 50 of them now. And there's lots of different ways you can survey for this sort of thing. And the scientific accepted way is to put cameras out randomly as spots, random spots, and see what you record. But we didn't want to do that because we wanted to actually find pine marten. So we actually instead selected areas, little areas, a few kilometres square, and I went out and surveyed looking for evidence of small mammals and mammal usage. Then we put the cameras there because we wanted to confirm if they're there or not. So we did that over a month. Each area we covered intensively for a month, very carefully selecting where to put the cameras. We backed it up with nocturnal transects, and I say bait here at the bottom. So the kind of accepted way of getting pine martens to show on camera is by putting bait out. They like to eat a lot. So a lot of people put pressure on me, say we should put bait out, but I'm quite opposed to that because we wanted to record pine martens in their natural habitat, their natural environment. So if we put bait out, there'd always be the question, well, was it there because you put the bait out? And so we wanted to record them doing their thing in their own way. So we used no bait at all. We did play with bait occasionally, tested different things, but then we also recorded all the mammals that we made a note of all the mammals that we recorded because we wanted to see if there's any relationships. So if an area, say for example, had a lot of pine martens and not very many squirrels. It's interesting to compare if that's recreated elsewhere, if there's any sort of these relationships between species. So that's what we did. They're the areas that we covered. 2021 down in the south of the forest, 2022 in the north, 2023 in the middle, and then this year, I'll talk about this year at the end, we've been doing a bit more with sort of hotspots around the place looking for DNA. So just before we start, this is one of our nicest clips of pine marten. So this is a pine marten with 2 kits. So those 2 that have run off with the kits, and that's an adult. And so this is gold dust for us. So this is in 2022 on the 4th of July, up in the north of the forest. I'll play it again because it's a nice clip. So we don't get many daytime clips. So it gives it like a feel of their character a little bit. They're very endearing. They really are. They're wonderful animals. I mean, I'll be biased, of course, but they are lovely. So what we did, we put cameras out. So these are the cameras. And so we didn't just place them randomly. Like I said, we selected areas. And there are 4 main areas that we selected. So we went out and checked the habitat. So one of the things pine martens don't like is water, because they've got soft coats, they get waterlogged, and so they don't like even getting their feet wet. And so where we found a stream running through the forest, such as here, this is down near Burley, this bit, they'd always use a natural crossing if they could, rather than, for one thing, it's a lot of effort to climb down, go through the water, back up the other side, much easier if you could go across. And so these environments we would go and look, and then we'd look at the various logs crossing, and generally these logs are covered in moss, and in the moss, if it's a run that's used by mammals a lot, you can see a clear wear trail through the middle. And then we'd use a UV light, so UV lights bring up urine, so a lot of mammals will scent mark particular spots just as this, so that's another bit of evidence that it's used by mammals. And so we'd pick these sites. So this is one such, and then there's a clip from, I should point it here. It's not, what's going on? It's not wanting to, oh, there we go. Oh, it's gone all the way now. There we go. So yeah, there's a pine marten using that crossing. And I would say, I said at the beginning, we didn't use bait, but every now and then we'd play with bait, and we were here. So this little blip there is actually a tin of gone-off sardines, because we were told pine martens love gone-off fish, and it draws them in. So we thought, oh, we'll try that. So we'll see again how the pine marten reacted to that. Sniffed it, and then, yeah, no thank you. And we would have left that there for longer, but that evening, or that later that day, somebody was walking a dog, I guess, nearby, and their dog came in and ate all the sardines. So that was that. So there you go. And then this is another one. This is another kind of environment. This is just fallen timber on the forest floor, and so this is. If you're a pine marten, you live your life a lot in the trees, but you'll come down and forage on the forest floor. And for one thing, the forest floor is covered in leaf litter, so it's quite scrunchy as you move along, but also much easier to move along on these fallen bits of timber. So for one, it's quieter and stealthier and quicker. And so we'd go out and survey the forest floor and look for areas where, almost like obvious routes that you would follow on fallen timber. And this is one such route. This is why this is so slow in reacting today. Oh, there we go. Oh, let's hope this doesn't happen every time. Anyway, there we go. So that's, yeah, as you can see. And this is just sort of mooching along. So it seems like it's just sort of nonchalantly sort of plodding along, but that is actually how they always move. They always seem sort of fairly laid back. But this is one hunting that's doing a little scent mark, and then off it trundles. And then this is the third environment, and this here is is what we call a tangle. So this is just a knot of vegetation, and this is a root plate. So one of pine marten's favourite foods is a small mammal, so bank voles and wood mice. And so we targeted areas that have a lot of bank voles and wood mice. And this here in particular is like bank vole heaven. This will be full of bank voles, and so we just sort of targeted those places as somewhere that a pine marten might go foraging. It's not wanting to. There we go. Oh, there we go. Right. So yeah, and you can see it investigating the root plate. Interesting. You've got blackbirds always alarm calling. Blackbirds get really agitated around pine martens. So that's always a good clue. If you hear blackbirds, oh there it goes. The pine marten dropped out the bottom. Blackbirds alarm calling, that might give away where a pine marten might be. And then this is the final one, and so this is an embankment. And so in the New Forest we've got all these old ancient enclosures that were put in for producing wood, largely for shipbuilding, and a lot of these old enclosures from the 17 and 1800s. They're not used anymore, but the embankments that separated them are still there, and those raised embankments are often used as routeways for mammals, a lot by deer and badgers and foxes, but because they're established, pine martens use them as well, and so we targeted a few of these. This is going to be frustrating if this keeps on happening. Oh, it's skipped. There we go. So, sorry? No, it's just his patterning. So it's just his bib. Yeah. There we go. So yeah. So those bib patterns, it's interesting, it's quite timely that you mentioned bib patterns because that's the next thing. So this bib pattern, and there's one of the reasons why we're keen to put on daytime clips, even though we don't get many, is because it shows the colour, the proper colour of a pine marten. So all too often you see them on the night or the infrared, and it makes them look almost sort of grey and sort of black and white, really. But they're quite colourful, really. But these bib patterns are key. So these are like their equivalent of a thumbprint or a fingerprint. So they're unique. So a lot of them have unique patterns, and that helps us identify individuals. And so one of the main things we do, we try to position the camera so it would be in a position where a pine marten would show off its bib pattern. And although we don't use bait, we do sometimes use shiny things. So if we have a camera, tea strainers we use quite a lot. We hang up above the camera, and because that spins and it sort of catches whatever light there is, and it might pine martens are incredibly curious, and so if they see something like that, they'll stop and look up, and then that helps show their bib pattern, and then we can record it. This is a perfect one because it's quite distinctive. Sometimes they're not quite so distinctive, but it can tell us a lot. So this next one is all of this same individual. So by recording the bib pattern on this individual, we've worked out roughly how big its territory is. It had quite a big territory. This is one down near Bewley. This is quite interesting, this one, because we surveyed this area in 2021 and recorded this individual in a number of different areas, quite spread out. I think the furthest distance between two recordings was about 4 kilometres. And we know this one had 2 kits. We picked up with kits. But the great thing was that we at the end of this year, we literally only a couple of months ago, we surveyed that area again. So it's down at Peneley Woods, and we picked it up again. So the same pine martens are still in the same area with that same distinct. So it was really, really pleasing to record. So yeah, still doing well.
And would that go back to his children, the kids? Would they have the same sort of pattern? Would that generate?
No, apparently not. No, so it's been we haven't done research on that, but there has been research on the bib patterns. No, it's complete. It seems to be completely random, the bib pattern that they end up with. So there's no sort of hereditary sort of passing down or anything. No, it's all sort of so each one is unique. Yeah. So this is a female, And so it's the females that hold the territory. So it's the females have their territories. There can be quite big territories, and she stays and guards and holds that territory. And it's the males. The males roam around all over the place and try to mate with as many females as possible. So the males are also territorial, but they have a huge territory which will encompass a number of different females that they'll go around. And they do this interesting thing, pine martens. Because they want to give birth in March. That's so they've got the whole summer season to go and feed. But their gestation period is only 4 months, and so then they would need to mate in November. But that's a time of shortage. It's a tough time, so they do this thing called delayed impregnation. So they actually mate in July. Yeah. So at the end of so normally they have the kits in March. They reach maturity in sort of June, or not maturity, but they're old enough to be independent in June. So they tend to go off at the end of June. So then in July they mate, and then they hold on to the male's semen, and then self-impregnate themselves in November, so that then they can start gestation and give birth in March. Yeah. So yeah, interesting. Interesting. Seals also do that. There's not many mammals do that. And so another thing we've been doing this year is putting tubes out. So it's all very well and good, and getting bib patterns is really good. It tells us a lot, tells us about the individuals. But if we want to dig in deeper, we need to get DNA. And so there's lots of different ways of getting DNA. Catching them is one way, but that's quite intrusive, and so we'd rather not do that. So this year we've been trying with tubes. So we put these tubes out, and the idea is, for one, that they're quite curious, so they look into the tubes. But we also put bait in the tubes for when we're doing this side of the project. And what we want to do is the pine martens to go into the tubes, and then we have a device in there to capture hares. And this year's been very much trial and error. So we started off, there's these things called that was suggested to us by other field workers called mouse pads, I think they're called, like sticky pads that pest controllers use to catch mice. So we put them on the sides, so as the pine marten goes through, hair gets stuck on it. But we found that ineffective, and we found it got covered in forest gunk, leaf litter and insects. We go in, there'd be a lot of insects, and I wasn't quite happy about the number of insects we were catching. And so we've switched to using Velcro. So we've got Velcro, and so the pine marten has to push through. The diameter of the tube is just so that it can squeeze through, but so then loose hairs get caught on the Velcro, and then we can get those hairs. And we've got a relationship with somebody at Aberystwyth University in Aberystwyth, where they can take the DNA from the hairs, and then that tells us a lot about the individual. But like I say, it's been a lot of trial and error. We haven't been incredibly successful this year. But yeah, so this is one of the tubes, and then we've also got a whole load of, we've got round tubes, square tubes. We've been trying all sorts of things, covering it with moss. But you can see the Velcro up here at the top, using eggs. So all sorts of things. There's been a lot of trial and error this year, so it's been quite hard work. But yes, so if you're walking around the forest and you see a tube, that would be why. Yes. And then this is just this is a few clips of pine martens checking out tubes. So they're all of it. And there's another one. This one does a nice little scent mark. There we go. So yeah, but we probably chose the wrong year to be doing this, because we put bait in, but because we had a massive seed mast crop in late 2023, there's been a boom of bank voles this year, and so there's an abundance of natural food for pine martens, and so they're not so interested in the bait. So we'll carry on next year. Oh, this is just I think if this is the one I'm thinking of, this is quite a nice little clip where one gets clobbered by an owl. I think it's this one. Oh no, maybe it's not. Maybe this is that one's still to come. But yeah. Yeah, they do scent mark an awful lot. So the other thing they do is scats. We'll talk about scats in a little bit. So just a few of our other clips. So we've got a few clips of this is a male and a female interacting. So this is a male that's got a wood mouse, that's trying to as a present for the female. See, it goes through the tube in this instance. But yes, and then this is the beginning of that clip. So yeah, that's the male with the prize. You can see the female's agitated. She looks up in a minute. You can see it's all ears back and quite angry. Steals the mouse. But yeah, it's not often you see the males and females together, so it's quite nice to see. Oh, this is my favourite one. This is the one where it gets clobbered by an owl. Excellent. And when you hear the audio on this, because the cameras record the sound as well, and you can see it's lost a clump of fur on its back. You can hear it's like an audible clobber, isn't it? It's like, yeah, really good. Oh, and there's another one. It does it twice. See, this one doesn't learn. So this happened on 2 days running, I think. Excellent. And then just some. So there's another scent mark, and then often have a good old sniff of the camera. And again on this one, if we had the audio, you can hear it sniffing. Yeah, there you go. And then this is my favourite one. This is a kit. It does so this is a kit that's got wet, that's just playing, and it does just a lovely little peekaboo in a minute. That's one of my favourite clips, that one. Cheeky. So, I thought that was all of them. So yeah, shows a bit of their colour. They've got a lovely colour. So, what we've found. So the pine martens, we recorded everywhere we surveyed, we recorded pine martens. With possible breeding in 5 areas, and that's the possible breeding is from evidence of seeing kits, like we've seen here. We found the bib patterns were really good. We didn't collect, well we did actually, that says no DNA, but we have collected some DNA from roadkills this year. And then we got 18,957 records of other mammals and birds. And so yeah, that's kind of where we are. So we've confirmed that the pine marten are widespread all across the forest, and everywhere where there's suitable habitat. We've found that the suitable habitat is ancient deciduous woodland. But they will forage in other areas as well, and so because they like to when they den, so when they're kind of nesting, as it were, they nest in a den. So that would be a crevice or a hole in a tree. So these old deciduous trees are perfect for that because they're full of dens. But they need a lot of suitable habitat because they'll move. They move from one den to another at least once a month, and so they're constantly moving, and they'll take their kits from one to another. And we think the reason they do that is because of their parasites. So there's a few parasites, particularly ticks. So pine marten are susceptible to ticks. So they get covered in ticks, and then they'll go back to the den. And if they've got a tick that's laying eggs, the life cycle of a tick is 28 days. And so within a month, the den could potentially become infested with ticks. And so to keep away from that happening, they need to move dens quite frequently. And ticks are quite a big issue here in the New Forest, and so I suspect that's the main reason why they move. But there's probably other reasons as well. But we don't study them at the den just because they're a protected species, and so you need special licenses, which we could obtain, but we don't want to inadvertently cause any disturbance to them, and so we keep clear of their nest. I keep calling it nesting. I'm a bird person mainly, so I keep on using bird terms. Sorry. Okay, so next steps. We need to do more with DNA, more looking at bib patterns, and what we're creating what we termed a bibliography. And so it's an index of all the bib patterns that we've got. Exploring other areas of the forest, and that's funny enough. After we've finished the meeting today, we're going up into Ashurst Wood to put some cameras out because that's an area, one of the few areas of the forest we haven't looked at yet. So we're going to go and have a look at that. And explore surrounding areas of the forest. So what we want to look at is where they're, from here, we think we're getting almost to capacity with pine martens, and so where's next, where they're going to go. And we're getting records. We had a record recently, in the past few years actually, we've had records from Totton, we've had records from up in the north, up towards Salisbury, and also out in the Perbecks, and we're thinking that all of these could be related to the New Forest population. But getting the DNA will help us answer that. So one other way to get DNA, and something that we're going to be doing this year, is looking for scats but finding scats is really hard. So scats is pine marten poo. It's quite distinctive because when they deposit their poo, they do a little bum shake, and they often end up looking a bit sort of pretzel shaped like that. So we go out looking for scats, but finding scats is really hard. And to get a useful scat for DNA, it has to be very fresh. It has to be like this, glistening. Because if you want to get DNA from it, you need to get it. So it's basically as the scat comes out, it gets coated in anal glands, and that's coated in stuff from the anal glands, and that's what holds the DNA. After only a few days, a scat becomes like this, which is just the remains of what it's eaten. And so if we were to get DNA from that, it would just be the DNA of whatever it happens to have eaten. So we need to get DNA off of glistening scats, and so that's actually quite tricky to do. But it's a good way of getting DNA. And so this year, actually, with Forestry England, they've got somebody who's coming over for a few weeks, or a few days even, who's trained their dog to sniff out pine marten scats. So yeah, so that's going to be an interesting exercise. That's in May, I think we're doing that, so I look forward to that. Okay, and then we'll talk a bit about other stuff now. So other stuff that we've recorded in the forest. Actually, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. Additional records. So also, as well as us getting records, we get records from other people. And we get asked a lot what to do. If somebody sees a pine marten, what should you do? And basically it's just to let somebody know, to either let us know or Forestry England is the best way. And we'd love to get your records. And there's lots of ways of getting records, from trail cameras, from scat sightings, and just from being out. Most of our records come from people being out and seeing a pine marten. But we have, as it says there, got a few records from people with garden trail cameras. One in Totten somebody was feeding hedgehogs in their garden, and they had a trail camera set up on the hedgehogs, and they got the pine marten coming in and stealing the hedgehog food. Interestingly, the hedgehog and the pine marten were there at the same time, and they got on quite well. And then security cameras. We had one record from Keyhaven, of all places, which is not where you'd expect a pine marten to be, but on a property, it's like an Airbnb, I think, that had security cameras, and they picked up a pine marten in their garden from those. So records come from all sorts of unusual places. But as I say, I won't dwell on this too much, but if you do see one, we'd love to hear about it. But you don't have to tell us directly, Forestry England or the Hampshire Mammal Group or anybody, and the records will get collated. But all records are really quite important. So, we'll talk a bit about other records now, other mammals and other things that we've had in the forest. So, as I say there, we've got nearly 19,000 records of other things. 15 mammals, 32 birds, lots of dogs, 3 cats, remarkably. And that tells us a lot about these other species. But before we get on to that, there's another question we get asked all the time, is, have you ever had a camera tampered with? Yeah. Funny enough, we had our first one stolen. This year. Yeah, the first one stolen. But on our very first beginning of the survey, we did have one tampered with, and that's what I'm going to get on to next. I was walking along, and I was going to check cameras. This was in 2021. And I noticed one of the cameras was hanging off a tree, and the cable had been cut. And I saw it from a long way away, and I thought, oh my God, what's happened here? And I'd never expected this. So I'm stalling, because I know it's on the next slide. But this is the note that was attached to the camera. I'll read it out to make it easier. To whom it may concern. We're very sorry, but to avoid our blushes, we found ourselves having to remove the SD card from your camera. Oh gosh, how embarrassing. We've replaced it with a brand new larger card and enclosed £50 to apologise and help replace any bits you need to. We're keeping our fingers crossed that you find this camera safely. Sorry again, and we hope you get to catch some amazing wildlife footage of the type you're aiming for. Best wishes in red faces, a much less spontaneous couple from now on. And they're good to their word. There's £50 note gaffer taped to the back of the camera where that more than covered the cost, and so
Then what's the next footage?
But
What's the next footage?
No, yeah, no. They took the card. So, and that's something we don't have on these talks, but we do record some interesting things, as you can imagine. The number of naked men we've recorded is remarkable.
Always on cold days.
Always on cold days. Well, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Before we get into the other mammals, just a very quick nod. We've been doing another. So I'm talking mainly about the survey work we did with Forestry England, but we did do another pine marten survey this year with Network Rail, because the railway runs through the middle of the forest here, and so monitoring the crossing points to see if pine martens are going across the railway. Network Rail are concerned because it's electrified third rail here that a pine marten wouldn't make it across at ground level. Badgers tend not to either because of their tails. They touch the electrified line and electrocute themselves. But there have been no records of electrocuted pine marten on the railway line, so we wanted to investigate to see if they're using the crossing points. So we monitored all of the crossing points, and long story cut short is no, we didn't find any pine martens crossing the railway line. So that's interesting in itself. And so other clips now. It's stalling on me again. Here we go. Right. So this is all the different mammals. So starting off with roe deer. So with deer in general. So as you can imagine, we recorded a lot of deer. This is just a nice clip with a row with two fawns. Normally they have one, but this has got two. So we've got 5 deer species in the New Forest. Roe is one of our native species, and they're quite widespread, but always in small numbers. This is working. This is red, our other native species. So we recorded these. These are big deer, so they're sort of almost the size of a New Forest pony. So they were recorded in certain areas. So in the centre, around the Brockenhurst area, mainly these records came from. But very majestic deer species. Fallow is the most numerous, so this is the fallow deer. So this is a medium-sized deer with a nice little fawn there, and they're widespread all across the forest, really numerous. So we recorded on almost every camera. We recorded fallow deer, and they're distinctive. They've got the black and white stripes on their hind. So the kids on our kid club sort of nicknamed them barcode bums because they've got the black and white stripes. But yeah, they were introduced by the Normans about 1,000 years ago as hunting quarry. And then this is the 4th one, the munkjack. So this is the new kid on the block. Munkjack have only really been in the forest for 25 years or so. So they escaped from a zoo up in Hertfordshire and have made their way across. But they're a bit problematic. Although quite cute, it has to be said. And apparently they taste, of all the deer, they taste the nicest apparently. Yeah. And then the 5th one, we haven't got a clip of here, is the seeker deer, but there's only a very small population of seeker deer down in the Bewley area. And then other mustelids, we recorded a lot of these. This is a stoat, so always during the day, and they're always hyper like this. So most of the clips they're flying past, but this one's seen the tube and doesn't quite know what to do, backwards and forwards. But yeah, they're very endearing. Stoats are lovely. A fraction of the size of a pine marten. But yeah, and we also, in the forest, we haven't got any clips of them. In the forest we get weasel as well. So stoat is more of a woodland species. So we, as you'd imagine, we recorded quite a few stoats across the forest. But weasels, I see them every now and then, but we didn't get any recordings. So they're harder to find, but they are out there, generally in more open areas. This is one we're excited to record. This is a polecat. This is quite a young polecat. So we recorded a few, and we recorded in a few different areas. So these are the first records for about 20 years in the forest. This is a particularly nice clip, this one. But yeah, they're similar in structure to a pine marten, but much more sort of lower slung, a little bit smaller, and the tail isn't quite as bushy, and different colouring altogether. I'll play that again just because it's quite a nice clip. So normally the polecat's just literally moving through, but this one's having a right old time. So it's scent marking. It's trying to get its scent on there. So there must have been something else as scent marked prior to the polecat coming through. And then otter. So yeah, we're along the streamway. So we weren't really targeting otter, but we did record quite a few otter because we had the cameras on those stream crossings, and so yeah, we picked up a few otter across the forest, and they seem to be quite widespread. Never numerous, but quite widespread across the forest. And badgers, as you can imagine, lots and lots of badgers. So yeah, and they often had a good old sniff of the camera. But yes. We've got a very healthy badger population in the New Forest. And there's a couple of young badger kits that have just heard the camera. Or cubs, not kits, I should say. Foxes. So lots of foxes. This is one with a grey squirrel, so that's quite pleasing to see. I don't like squirrels. But then this next one is this is also a fox, but with a bit of a gruesome one. Luckily we're not eating, but this is with a muntjac's head. So yeah, that muntjac's seen better days. There it goes. And then a couple of...
Where do the pine martens live? Do they live underground or...?
Oh yeah, they're up in the trees in little dens. Yeah, yeah. But they'll be moving around at the ground level during the night. Which is why we've got the cameras out in these places. So yeah, a couple of nice fox cubs. Next, this is I know this is Emily's favourite clip. So we get a lot of small mammals, a lot of mice, bank vole, but this one in particular, this is from ages ago, but this is quite an entertaining one. But it comes back and there's something there on the branch that it likes. But you see. There you go. See another side of mice now. I'll play that again because it sort of happens quite quickly. But yeah. But yeah. That's that lovely. It's where it looks down. Yeah. Who would have thought mice would have such attitude? And then it's squirrels, lots and lots of squirrels. So I really don't like squirrels very much. That's the best I can do to bring myself to put squirrels on. But of course...
Would a polecat eat a squirrel?
Yes, it would.
Pine martens.
A pine marten eats squirrels as well, yes. Yeah. Which is why we quite like... and that's another reason why we're recording squirrels, because we set up the survey so that it can be repeated down the line. And so in future years we can come back, maybe after 5 years or 10 years, and survey an area and see what the relative... see if it's... Yeah. But then this, a pony. So our cameras, we found out, make quite convenient scratching posts for ponies. So quite often we'd turn up and a camera would be at a jaunty angle or moved or knocked, and we'd think, oh God, what's happened here? And literally... 9 times out of 10 it's a pony or a cow having a scratch and it's moved the camera, so that's fine, we can forgive them for that. And then birds, so we have quite a few birds as well. So this is quite a nice one, a kingfisher. So we get kingfishers breeding up and down the streamways. It's quite nice. And this is grey wagtail, which is a very attractive bird, another bird of our streamways. So they sort of live hand in glove alongside kingfishers. This is my favourite. So this is a bird I've been studying for 15 years. This is a hawfinch. So the New Forest is quite a special place for hawfinches. We've got about a third of the UK population. But beautiful birds. But one of the reasons I'm so excited about this is you'll notice on its leg it's got a yellow ring. And so we ring them. So we put colour rings on the hawfinches. So we catch them, put rings on. It's another study that we do up in the sort of centre in the north of the forest to track their movements. And so I was really excited on one of our pine marten cameras to pick up this hawfinch. This was down near Brockenhurst. So it's one that had travelled probably from Boulderwood. So it's quite exciting. I was excited about that anyway. I remember the moment because as you can imagine, we get a lot of footage. There's a lot of squirrels, a lot of animals, a lot of people even, and so we sit. That's our life is going through hours and hours of camera footage. So we do it at every opportunity. And this one, I happened to be actually on a Zoom call on a meeting with a bird group, and I was going through and I found this picture of a hawfinch, and I was so excited. And then somebody in the meeting asked me a question. I didn't know what was going on because I was all excited about the hawfinch, and so I had to say, "Oh, I'm very sorry, I wasn't paying attention." But there you go. Right, it's stalling again. I've been talking too much. There we go. So it's not all about rare stuff. We get a lot of common birds as well, blackbirds, song thrush, missel thrush, robin, wren, nuthatch, all sorts of things we'd pick up. And on the waterways, so this is quite a nice little clip. This is a mandarin, so this is a non-native species, but with a little brood, so it's quite good to confirm breeding. And they all make it over in the end. So there you go, that's quite nice. And then we saw the clip of the pine marten being clobbered by an owl, but we've got lots of records of owl doing their thing. So tawny owl is our most abundant species. These are all tawny owls that we recorded. So the tawny owls are, like I say, our most widespread owl species. This is a fairly young one, I think, investigating the tube. And there's another couple of even younger ones here. So you can see these sort of almost like little punk tawny owls. Two of them. They're very endearing. They're very aggressive birds, though, owls. Tawny owls in particular have got a real attitude. But yeah, not every camera recorded tawny, but quite a lot. We've got a lot of records of tawny owl. And then birds of prey. This is a buzzard, common buzzard. That's just caught in its talon here. It's got a bank vole. And so we've got a lot of buzzards, but this is a particularly pale buzzard. This is just quite a nice clip, this one, so it eats the bank vole in a second. First of all, they stretch them out. So this is it, stretching out the vole so that it goes down a bit easier. And then it just goes straight down, just like that. And I always say, we were looking at the dessert menu just now, I always say it's kind of how I eat my desserts, so it's just straight down, doesn't touch the sides. And there it goes. And then, this is quite a nice little couple of clips. This is a sparrowhawk. This is a young male sparrowhawk. But I get asked a lot, so in the New Forest we've got sparrowhawks and we've got goshawks. And I get asked a lot about the difference and how to identify the difference. And this next clip after this is a goshawk sat in exactly the same spot, so you can see the size difference. But yes, this is a young, like I say, young male sparrowhawk, and then the next clip is goshawk. So you can see goshawks are big old brutes. And we recorded a lot of goshawks. They're sort of like the top predator in our neck of the woods. They're really quite vicious. They would eat a pine marten if they could. The reason they don't eat as many as they do is that these are often active by day, pine martens by night, so they don't tend to cross over all that much. But we've got a lot of goshawk action, and so yeah, this is a big goshawk here, big young female goshawk. This one's trapped, you can't see it in the footage, and unfortunately we can't hear it, but this has pinned a grey squirrel, so there's a grey squirrel underneath this bridge, and it can hear it, and then it drops down, and then you can hear the squirrel being dispatched. And you see the splashing as they're doing it there. But goshawks are particularly vicious. They don't like to take prey back to the nest that's still got feather or fur on it, so they'll skin the grey squirrels on sight. And so every now and then you'd be walking around the forest and you can see like a grey squirrel skin hanging off of a tree. It looks really, really eerie. It's almost like a little bit dark, but generally it's a goshawk that's done that. And then this is just a couple of young goshawks. So we do a fair bit of work with birds of prey and goshawks in the forest. So we've probably got more clips than we should of goshawks. But there's two youngsters here. One flies in a minute. But yeah, really quite ungainly at that age. And then this is yeah, we get a lot of this is a, you can't hear it. This is a woodpecker pecking the camera. And we get a lot of that from blue tits and woodpeckers. And then we're nearing the end of the talk. So this is just, I said at the beginning a bit about us. So we're Wild New Forest, and so we do, like I say, a lot of conservation work across the forest. We do guided tours. So this is just a bit about the guided tours. We do a lot of walks with fungi. Emily here is quite a fungi fanatic, so we go out looking at various bits of fungi. We do boat trips up and down the Beaulieu River, looking at the seals and the eagles. I'm mildly obsessed with hawfinches, so we do quite a lot of stuff with hawfinches. We do a lot with youngsters, and that's one of the things I just wanted to very quickly talk about is if you have any youngsters that are interested in wildlife, we run like a biannual club, a weekend camp where we go away for the weekend. We also have a Wildlife Explorers Club. So the club, we meet about once a fortnight, and it's a group of youngsters aged anything from sort of 12 upwards. We go out and do wildlife stuff, and so it could be anything from looking how to identify a tree to ringing birds to looking at small mammals and doing pine martens, all sorts of things. It's free, so it's sponsored. Well, we sponsor half of it, and then next year Nature Trek, the tour company, is sponsoring the other half. So it's all free, and you can join via our website. But the main thing is just to get youngsters out there, because we particularly target youngsters that have an interest in wildlife but may not be able to get the opportunity to go out that often. And particularly it's personal experience really from me, because I was passionate in wildlife at this age, and when I was a kid, everybody seemed to be old, grey-haired, bearded men, and quite grumpy and miserable and unapproachable, and so it made it seem like a closed world. And so we want to open it up a little bit. And I never had the opportunity to go to university, and a lot of these guys may not either, but they can still get a career in conservation. University is a great way to go, but it's not the only way to go. And so we want to try and sort of bring these people together so they don't feel so isolated. And so for one, if you know of anybody that's young, passionate about wildlife, then get them to look at the website, and we'd love to take on any like-minded youngsters. And we do all sorts of stuff. So we go out doing even stuff like sustainable farming and measuring trees and all sorts, bioblitzes and whatnot. Oh, and then if you're interested, we have a monthly newsletter. And so although we're an organisation that does guided tours, the newsletter is nothing about selling trips. It's just about promoting the forest, and that's kind of what our main thing outside of the research is just trying to demonstrate how wonderful the New Forest is for wildlife and what a fantastic place it is. But it's not a closed shop, like I say. It's there for us. We can all go out and enjoy it and explore it. And so with the newsletter, we're just trying to highlight some of the nice wildlife that's out there seasonally. And then finally, we endorse the New Forest Code, which is if you are out in the forest, it's all common sense, really, to be honest. But it's just about respecting the forest and the wildlife and the commoner stock that's out there. That's it. Well, thank you very much. Okay.
What is the natural lifespan of a pine marten?
That's a good question. We don't really know. Yeah, so in captivity they can live up to about 20 years.
Really?
Yeah, but everything lives longer in captivity than they do in the wild, and so we don't really know. So we suspect a lot is probably 4 or 5 years, but they could get up to about 10 years if you've got a good one. But a lot depends on its stress. So stress is the biggest killer. Finding food and so on. But
it's incredible. I didn't realise they had that incredible colour bit.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
they're beautiful animals.
Yeah.
They're so, and their personality and their temperament are so endearing. But yeah, and I don't want to give a false impression of them, because they are lovely and I'm biased. But then they are pretty vicious as well.
Yeah.
And so we've got footage of them. One with a blackbird. We've got images of them with squirrels, and they're pretty ruthless when they catch their prey. So, yeah, exactly. But that's nature for you, and it's sort of nature's red in tooth and claw, as they say. But But yeah, so we're keen to get across the message. They're not just, they are
How many do you
endearing.
think there are in the New Forest?
That's a good question. We don't know exactly, but we estimate probably about 20 breeding females. So it's the females that are important, that have the territory, and we think that they're probably at capacity. So we think the forest is big enough to maybe accommodate about 20. So we're pretty much, like I say, at capacity really. Yeah.
How many chicks female?
They're slow breeders that have 2 a year. And it's often maybe only one of those 2 will survive. But even that one that survives, there's only a 50-50 it makes it through its first winter.
How many times could a female produce? Is there a certain age they would stop?
Oh yeah, again that's the one we're not completely sure about. So we know they don't start until they're 2 or 3 years old. And then it's just once a year, essentially. And sometimes they do miss a year if they're not in good condition. And then, we don't really know if there's like an upper limit. I suspect they carry on until they expire, but we don't really know for sure.
That's not a big regime. Just have 2, maybe 1 passes away.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a female.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is there a theory as to why they suddenly come back recently? I mean, you said there was one that DNA said came from Scotland.
Yeah.
How many you've got down here from Scotland?
Well, there's lots of possible ways, but we suspect it was a clandestine reintroduction. But whoever's done it has done it very well. And so the reason it's significant that they're Scottish as well is because we've learnt that only UK pine martens can survive in the UK climate. And so there's these different haplotypes, which are the regions. So there's 3 in the UK. There's an English haplotype, Scottish and Irish. Those 3 can survive in the UK. The English haplotype is extinct now. But pine martens from the continent, if they're brought in here, they can't survive. And so if you're going to do a successful reintroduction, they've got to be Scottish origin. And so whoever's done it has done their homework and done it well. And so it's going to be somebody with a lot of resources. And so there's a few people that it could possibly be, but nobody's admitting to it. But ironic thing is, it probably would have happened anyway. So the reintroduction would have happened here, but they've just jumped the gun, and that often happens in wildlife. Yeah.
Well, it's been absolutely delightful to watch this on a cold winter's day.
Yeah.
It's really lovely. And it is nice to know that they're getting the youngsters involved as well. That's a brilliant part of it. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Thank you.